What's up, guys? Tim Little. Welcome back to Tactical Bass. In today's video, we are covering the fall transition. Bass fishing during that fall transition, where those fish are going, and the best baits to catch them. The fall transition can be very, very tricky. It can be downright tough if you don't know what to look for or what to pay attention to. A lot of anglers don't even realize that the fall transition has started. They're still stuck in their summer ways. They're throwing their frog, they're punching, they're flipping, throwing a fluke in grass, and they might still be catching fish, but pretty soon those fish are gonna vacate that area and move during that fall transition. So the biggest thing to take away from this video, pay attention to your overnight lows. I'm actually filming this video on the hottest day of the year so far. It is hot, but guess what? This evening is cool, okay? And that means that those fish overnight start that transition. So even though you're fishing all day, you get up, you go out, you're sweating, you're drinking lots of water, feels like summer, even though you're not putting a sweatshirt on at night, but when you walk outside or maybe when you get up early in the morning and you're like, ooh, it feels a little chilly outside, that is go time. That is triggering those fish to start that transition. Now, depending on the type of fishery you're on, determines the speed that transition happens. You know, if you're on a highland reservoir, lowland reservoir, a little bit deeper water, not a lot of grass, it's going to happen a little bit slower than if you're on a grass fishery. Because if you're on a grass fishery, having those overnight lows, guess what that means? That grass starts dying. So those fish have to vacate the area that they're in to go find either livelier grass or hard cover, hard structure, rock, wood, dock pilings, that sort of stuff. So today's video is going to kind of go over where these fish are going, how to stay along with them during that transition, and then catch them with some of my favorite baits, some of the confidence baits that I have for that fall transition for covering water. We'll end with that. So again, the fall transition starts as soon as your overnight air temps start dropping. For some of you guys watching this video, it's probably already started and you didn't realize it. So time to catch up. Those of you guys that are on your highland reservoirs deeper, you probably still have some time, but know that it is coming. So where are these fish going? For me, it's my opinion, it's fairly simple, right? It's all about bait. If you can find those bait balls, you will catch bass. So right now, as those overtime lows are dropping, those fish are starting to kind of think about wintertime, that fall transition. They're thinking about feeding up, and they're going to be chasing bait balls. So that could be offshore, it could be in the very backs of creek arms. So it depends on your type of fishery, but just understand, overnight lows drop, those fish are out and they're chasing bait. Now, like I said a little bit earlier, you highland reservoir guys will have some more time, deeper water, a little bit clearer water. You typically don't have a lot of grass. Those fish are going to move off of, maybe you were in the very back of a bay, maybe you had some grass back there, or you had an area that was close to a creek channel. Those fish are going to start pulling out and they're going to move to the nearest hard structure, okay? Guys that are in the grass, same thing. If you're in a big, vast bay, or maybe you're on the TVA, Gunnersville or something like that, and you've been catching them in the back of a pocket, very back, they might have had some bait pinned up back there. As that grass starts dying, those fish are going to move, and they could go 50 yards, they could go a couple hundred yards, they could go a quarter of a mile to that either livelier grass It's gonna be real green, real thick. That is really, really important. What I want you guys to understand is it's hot, right? We're finally getting through summer. The water temps are the highest they've probably been all year, and that really reduces the oxygen in the water. So that green, livelier grass helps produce oxygen, puts it in the water, so it helps those fish be comfortable, breathe easier. So they move to that grass along with all the baitfish, the bluegill, all the panfish, and your little silver sides, your threadfin shads, and your gizzard shad, okay? So everything's moving to the grass. Highland reservoirs, lowland reservoirs, less grass, they're moving to rock or wood. So back out of where you've been catching them. Maybe it was, like I said, in that back of that bay. Now you're gonna bump out to that first secondary point, check there, and then move those secondary points down back out towards the main lake point. So kind of like reverse of that spring transition. As those fish were coming in from wintertime, their winter haunts, they're taking those secondary points to the next secondary point. They're getting back in that spawning bay, and maybe that's where you've been catching them all year, all summer. Now, another area that I really like to check that's good this time of the year is a close creek channel. So if you're in that same scenario, and maybe that secondary point or that secondary point is an opening that goes back to another arm that has a deep creek channel, a lot of times this time of the year, those fish are gonna work in wolf packs, and they're gonna push those bait balls into those creek arms. Sometimes I'll push them all the way to the back. A lot of times it's just near that deeper water where they can kind of hold them there. But check your creek arm going back as well. Use your side imaging, your 2D, whatever side imaging or electronics you have. You'll be able to see those bait balls on your electronics, and a lot of times you'll see the lines pushing them. It's really, really cool. They're in big wolf packs and they're chasing those bait balls. So hard structure and creek channels, okay? You grass guys, find that grass, that livelier grass, and or the first rock, wood, dock pilings, that sort of stuff. So kind of breezed over it. The highland reservoirs, like I said, it does happen a little bit slower, but again, those fish are gonna vacate those areas that you've been catching them all summer, and they're basically gonna be nomadic fish. They're gonna be chasing those bait balls offshore, and that can be really, really tough to pattern. A lot of times you're gonna see them blowing up out a quarter mile, half mile offshore, a mile offshore, and they're just out there chasing those bait balls. So those fish can be really, really hard to target, but it's not impossible, and it can be a lot of fun if you have a top water or a swim bait that you can reach out and catch those fish. We'll talk about that here shortly. Your lowland reservoirs, typically, those are your reservoirs that have a longer, shallower dam. So you might kind of have that same grass situation where you need to find those fish that are vacating that dead grass. As that water temp drops, that grass kind of starts turning brown. It starts to die. Out here in East Tennessee on the TVA in the next month or so, and it's going to top out that grass. So now all of a sudden you're going to have miles of just matted grass. So that's where it's really important to look at it and see what is livelier. The liveliest grass you can find, pay attention, listen, look for bluegill popping, look for bait popping, look for just life in the grass, if that makes sense. Pond fishermen, I don't want to forget, talk about ponds. Kind of figure out the type of pond you have. Maybe you're fishing a quarry, so it's real deep, steep walls. That's more like a highland reservoir. Maybe you're fishing a shallow bowl pond that, a bowl just kind of has a lot of grass around the edges. That's gonna be more like your lowland reservoir. So it just totally depends. But in your mind, depending on the pond that you're fishing, picture those two different scenarios. Fish the grass if you need to, find that livelier grass, or move down to the dam, typically your deepest area near rock, and try and slow down and fish for those fish down there. But again, these fish, once this transition happens, again, it can happen quick. You might have been on an epic topwater bite, and then all of a sudden overnight they're gone. And that's just what happened. You know, those overnight lows dropped, the water temp dropped, and those fish bounced. So hopefully you guys are kind of ahead of the curve and paid attention, and you can transition with these fish and follow them all the way out to wherever they're going and catch them along the way. Okay, one other deal. Rivers. I talked about highland reservoirs, talking about lowland reservoirs, natural lakes, rivers. Let's talk about those real quick. Natural lake, again, they're semi-featureless. There's not a lot of very steep contour lines or anything like that. So if you do have a creek channel, or maybe when a drought year when the water was low, you have a new shoreline that was kind of eroded away, and then when the water came up, you kind of have like an offshore old shoreline. Those fish are going to use that as like a highway to move, but they're just looking for a little bit deeper water. And again, they're looking for areas that they can corral the bait. Again, like I said earlier in this video, for me, it's all about the bait. Yes, you can still catch them on a jig. You can catch them on your, flipping, your craw patterns, your craw stuff. But I like to move fast. These fish, my favorite thing this time of the year is offshore and chasing those offshore schools with like a fluke or a topwater, an underspin, that sort of stuff. It's a lot of fun because you can get wolf packs of 30, 40, 50 fish just grenading bait, and it's a lot of fun. So we'll talk about that here in just a second. But so natural lakes, just look for those bigger bays, look for areas that they can use to corral the bait. A lot of times once they do corral the bait, as you're running up and down the lake, pay attention to, look at the little backwaters, look around, you'll see blowups and stuff. A lot of times they will hold that bait in that certain little area for days, weeks at a time, and you can really take advantage of them having that bait just kind of fenced in, corralled in that little bay. And then again, check for creek channels, kind of like those highland and lowland reservoir guys. And then the river system, again, it's all current. Depending on late storms and such, and current flow, sometimes it will help or hurt the grass. Sometimes it will stay level, and the grass will be topped out, and you can catch them on frogs, that sort of stuff. But sometimes you'll get those late storms, and they'll open the floodgates, and a lot of times they'll rip the grass out. So be cognizant of that, pay attention to that. But for the most part, those fish are going to be in the grass. They're going to be out there on the current seams or the eddies in the river to get out of the current, but they're going to be wanting to feed. If that current's going, they're going to be right next to it on the current breaks, looking to feed up. Okay. If you guys have any questions on that, or maybe you have some questions on what type of fishery you're actually fishing, just leave those down below in the comment section. Matt and I will try to get to those and help you guys out with that. But we talked about the different types of fishery. Again, the fisheries, again, bait fish. These fish are looking to feed up. For me, it's primarily reaction fishing. It's go time. You got to move fast, cover water. There's going to be a lot of dead areas on your fishery this time of year. Those fish, they might have been peppered or spread out through spring, through summer. Now that fall transition is starting, we're thinking about fall, those fish are going to group up. So you might have a whole shoreline that you've been catching fish, maybe a whole dock line you've been catching fish all summer long. Now those fish are going to school up and they're going to start chasing. So that's why I like to throw reaction. You can slow down and worm and jig and that sort of stuff. But in my opinion, you're going to be best off moving, covering water, and trying to stay up, keep up with those schools of bass chasing bait. So for me, let's talk shallow. No, let's talk deep, and then we'll go shallow. So for me, again, a crankbait. Some kind of deep crank. So anywhere from 10, 12, 14, 16 to 20 foot. That's really that depth that I'm looking at. So we designed this guy right here for this scenario. As that water cools, that's the tactical DD crank. That's the one that Matt and I designed. This is from right now all the way into early spring. That is when this bait shines. It's when we switch to this instead of throwing like a 6XD. As you start getting that cooler water, you want that real tight wobble and you want to be able to move it fast. So that is hands down our #1 crank. Another great one this time of the year is the Rapala DT16 or 20, depends on the depth. Again, this is more of a slow float. I've talked about that in recent cranking videos. You know, if you're a forward-facing sonar guy and you want to suspend this bait down in the treetops, you know, this bait is for you. But again, speed cranking, burn, 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 pause, burn, 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 burn. Get real aggressive with that crankbait. You know, the reason that we designed this, that real tight wobble, it just works better in that colder water. So as your water temps drop, and these fish transition to chasing threadfin, that sort of stuff, that is really when this bait shines. So that's my #1 go-to, the crankbait for deep water. Two other baits real quick that I want to talk about that I've had a lot of success, especially in the month of September through October, is going to be, did I not? Oh, there it is. I'm like, where did it go? First off, this guy right here, the burrito. The 5 and the 6 inch, primarily the 5 inch, just a little downsize. It's more of that thread fin, smaller gizzard shad size, and I've had the best luck with this. That is the tactical shad color. But again, if you're looking to, you're a highland reservoir guy, or you're a grass guy that's moving out deep, looking for that hard structure, throw this thing out there, let it hit bottom, and just swim it along the bottom, and you guys are going to catch fish. Caught fish 7-8 pounds on this last year. This guy right here is a must, especially if you're fishing deeper water. And then last but not least, the flutter spoon. Again, I don't know how many times I've said it in this video. It's all about the bait fish. In my opinion, suspended fish that are schooling and destroying bait balls, when you throw this is actually the Nichols flutter spoon. When you throw this thing out there, even though it's a big chunk of metal, the way this thing falls, it's just like a dying bait fish. So as those fish are down there just destroying that bait ball, you know, there's going to be wounded shad, there's going to be, you know, knocked out dazed shad, and those shad are gonna fall. A lot of times your biggest fish are underneath the school, and they're just down there being lazy, picking up dead, dying bait fish, and that guy right there is killer this time of the year. All right, you shallow guys, so guys that are still in the grass, myself included. Again, I told you I love throwing. Did I even talk about topwater? I didn't even talk about topwater. I'm gonna talk about topwater in both categories, but offshore, so in the deep category, you're fishing topwaters out over 60, 80, 120 feet of water, because a lot of times a spotted bass, heck, even largemouth, I'll catch largemouth out there too doing it, but they'll be chasing around these bait balls, and they'll be out suspended over deep water, but they're only down maybe 10, 12, 15 feet in the water column. So this top water works really, really well. This is actually that's that mega bass. That's that Giant Dog X. Really like that guy. But again, it's a bait that I always have cocked and loaded, laying on the deck. So if I'm fishing the swim bait, or I'm fishing the spoon, and then all of a sudden 30 yards away they come up schooling, I can drop my rod, pick this thing up, and send one, and get in that school as fast as possible while those fish are blowing up, while they're fired up, to really take advantage and catch some of the biggest topwater fish of the entire year. It is a ton of fun. So didn't want to skip over that. But now transitioning back to the shallow fish, the grass. You know, I keep saying grass. It still could be shallow. It doesn't have to be in the grass. You don't have to be punching or flipping or anything like that. But the shallow fishermen. So if you're outside of you know, that 2, 3, 4 foot range, I'm going with a square bill. Again, speed is key this time of the year. I'm going with a square bill, something with some good sound on it, something that has high float. I can burn it, pause it, let it back up, rip it. If I do hit some grass, I can get real aggressive with it. That's that Biggie, River Sea Biggie. You guys know that that's one of our favorites. Two other ones that work great at different depths. The Jabberjaw, and I'll link all this stuff down below in the video description. Favorite colors and stuff. And then the Spro, that's the Fat John 50. A little bit shallower this time of the year. I talked about it in a video a couple weeks ago, but a lot of times these fish will push bait super, super shallow. I mean, their dorsal fin, when they're eating and blowing up on this bait, you know, their backs are coming out of the water. So this guy can really get super shallow. You don't have to worry about getting hung up. But those three right there are my favorite. Typically, I'm throwing shad colors in all of these baits. And then if you're having issue with the crankbait, the square bill in and around the grass, that's when I go with either one of these two. Either a chatterbait, jackhammer, that's the spunk shad, or a Kitech rigged weedless on a flashy swimmer. This I can fish over the tops of the grass. I can fish it through it. You know, it can be frustrating this time of the year. As I'm talking, I'm thinking about last year and just grass mats that were just alive, bombs were dropping, you know, and you just couldn't get baits in there. You'd get fouled up. You know, that flashy swimmer, even downsizing, going with a little bit smaller size swim bait, even a smaller size frog will really work wonders this time of the year. I remember last year, the year before, you know, throwing a full-size frog, a full-size Kitech, we really had to downsize to get those fish to commit to our bait. Again, there's thousands of threadfin, you know, thousands of gizzards down there in those mats and in the grass, up shallow. So you gotta be special. You gotta make your bait have some flash to really make that bait stand out. And that's where I really like, you know, putting a little bit of flash on my frog, maybe a blade, maybe I'm throwing a toad, something like that. But the grass fish, it can be frustrating, but it can also be awesome. You know, you can get out on a day on the water, and by the end of it, your ribs are sore from so many hook sets throwing the swim baits or the frogs up in that grass. But if you're having issues getting that square bill, go with a chatterbait. A lot of times you can rip that free, and if you have more issues with that, go with the underspin. That's kind of my 1, 2, 3 punch up shallow subsurface. One little asterisk to that is going to be a fluke. So a jerkbait or a fluke. Again, these fish are up chasing. You know, if you can get away with something real aggressive and treble hooks, again, these fish are going to be slashing. You know, go with a 3-hook bait. Ooh, bent that one out. Go with a 3-hook bait. That's that World Minnow. It's got the flash boost in there, lots of flash. Really like that guy. And then if I am in the grass, I can't get those treble hooks through, I'm going to go with a fluke. You know, something you can work in and through that grass. And again, it has that dying baitfish fall when you kill it. Now, last but not least, shallow. I already talked about top water and open water and deep. Shallow, it's really simple. I'm throwing some kind of whopper plopper, buzz bait style bait. I really like the whopper plopper because you can pause it. When you come to a certain area, you can rip it, let it sit. If you're throwing a traditional buzz bait, it's gonna sink. So that's why I really like the whopper plopper. And then a frog. You diehard grass guys, you know, find that lively grass, find those lively mats, and you can really put the hurt into them with a frog. I like a frog either, typically this time of the year, I'm throwing some kind of white belly frog or bluegill or kind of shad pattern frog. You know, something like the little Jackal the Caera. That's an awesome little finesse frog. That's that frog I had to step down to last year to get those fish to commit. They wouldn't eat a full-size frog. But typically some kind of white or silver belly, gray belly, something that they can see when they're up there or in the mat looking up. You want them to be able to see your frog. But guys, the fall transition is upon us. You know, summer, I'm happy summer's over. It's been hot for whatever reason, this year seems like it's just been characteristically hot around the country. Everywhere I look, they're breaking all-time record highs. And like I said earlier, today's the hottest day of the year here in East Tennessee, but we had a cool night last night. All last week was cool, and those fish are already starting to transition, and they're on the bait and they're moving. So I wanted to shoot this video, try and get ahead of it for you guys, but pay attention to those overnight lows. You know, if you wake up tomorrow morning and you walk outside, it just feels a little bit chilly, start thinking about the stuff we talked about today, because it's gonna really matter as this transition gets into full swing, and those fish will ghost you. Again, they're gonna vacate those areas and they're gonna look for that lively grass, they're gonna look for hard cover structure, and they're gonna be looking for bait. So check those creek channels, check the backs of the bays. If you can, and you're out offshore fishing, you know, with your drop shot or your worming or whatever, keep that top water cocked and ready to let it fly, because, you know, I've caught some of the biggest spots of my life when I wasn't even targeting them. I was fishing, slow fishing, they came up just busting, picked up the top water, and boom, boom, boom. It's awesome when you can really take advantage of their feeding frenzy mentality. But all right, guys, like I said, I think we'll wrap that up there. It is a great time to be out on the water. It does get cooler. The mornings are cooler. You got the fog up on the water. It's beautiful. A lot of guys will start thinking about hunting. So a lot of guys are gonna start putting away their boats, putting away their rods, start picking up their guns, their bows, their tree stands. And then a lot of the recreational guys and gals will be putting away their boats and stuff. So you're gonna have a lot more space on the water. And again, those cooler nights makes it more enjoyable, less sweat, and I'm really, really looking forward to it. So guys, if you have any questions, leave those down below in the comment section. We'll try to get those as soon as possible. If you like this video or you learned something from it, give us hit that thumbs up, hit that like button, and remember to subscribe. We're due 6 videos a week, guys. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, long format, and then we're doing shorts and stuff on different platforms. But make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the content. As always, guys, thanks for watching, and we will see you guys on the next video.